There's something profoundly powerful about the way food and daily habits interact with the brain. Most people think of food simply as fuel, calories in, energy out, but the truth is far deeper. Food is information. It's a chemical messenger that communicates directly with the nervous system, influencing everything from our mood and focus to our capacity for learning and memory consolidation. And habits? They're the consistent inputs that determine whether your brain is optimized for clarity and adaptability or stuck in cycles of stress, fatigue, and distraction. Let's start by understanding that the human brain is not static. It's plastic, meaning it changes throughout our lives. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to rewire itself in response to experience. But what's often missed is that nutrition and lifestyle practices create the conditions that either allow that rewiring to occur effectively or impede it. Every bite you take and every habit you repeat is like a vote cast for the version of your brain that you are building. Now, if we're going to talk about how food shapes the mind, we need to address glucose regulation. The brain is an energy-intensive organ. It makes up about 2% of your body weight, but consumes around 20% of your daily energy. That energy primarily comes from glucose. When blood sugar levels spike and crash throughout the day, usually from highly processed carbohydrates or sugar-rich diets, the brain responds with instability. You experience fog, irritability, and a reduced capacity for sustained attention. This isn't just about feeling sluggish. Chronic dysregulation of glucose impairs the function of the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for decision-making, self-control, and goal-oriented behavior. Equally important is the role of amino acids, the building blocks of proteins. Specific amino acids are precursors to neurotransmitters. For example, tryptophan is needed to produce serotonin, which regulates mood and social behavior. Tyrosine is a precursor to dopamine, critical for motivation and reward. If your diet is deficient in these essential nutrients, you're not giving your brain the tools it needs to function properly. It's like trying to build a house without bricks. There's also a conversation to be had about fatty acids, particularly omega-3s, which are found in fatty fish like salmon and sardines. These fats are not just fuel, they are structural. The membranes of your brain cells are literally made of fatty acids, and omega-3s are critical for maintaining their flexibility and communication. A deficiency here doesn't just impact physical health. It correlates with higher rates of anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. Then there's the gut-brain axis. Your gut isn't just a digestion machine. It houses its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, and communicates directly with your brain via the vagus nerve. The microbiota, the trillions of bacteria living in your gut, produce neuroactive compounds, including serotonin and GABA. The diversity and health of your microbiome influence how you feel, think, and respond to the world. And what determines the health of that microbiome? Fiber-rich foods, fermented products, and a diversity of plant-based inputs. In contrast, diets high in processed food and artificial sweeteners can reduce microbiome diversity and increase systemic inflammation, which is a major contributor to mental health disorders. Now, food is one half of the equation. Habits are the other. Let's talk about sleep. Sleep is not passive. It is an active neurobiological process critical for memory consolidation, emotional regulation, and metabolic function. During deep sleep, the brain engages in a process called glymphatic clearance, where cerebrospinal fluid washes away metabolic waste products, including beta amyloid, which is associated with Alzheimer's disease. If you're shortchanging sleep consistently, say getting less than 6 hours a night, you are impairing your brain's ability to clean itself and process experiences. Over time, that leads to reduced neuroplasticity, poor decision making, and increased emotional reactivity. A habit that is often underestimated is light exposure. Light is the primary Zeitgeber or time giver for your circadian rhythm. When you get bright light, preferably sunlight, within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, you anchor your biological clock. This increases cortisol appropriately in the morning, making you more alert, and sets the timer for melatonin in release later in the evening, which promotes sleep. If you miss that morning light, or worse, if your primary light exposure comes from screens late at night, you confuse your circadian rhythm. And when that rhythm is out of sync, everything else suffers: energy, mood, cognitive function, and even metabolic health. There's also exercise. It's not just for cardiovascular health or muscle gain. Movement is a signal to the brain that life is active, meaningful, and worth engaging with. Aerobic exercise increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a molecule that supports the growth of new neurons and strengthens existing connections. Resistance training also contributes by improving insulin sensitivity and increasing levels of neurotransmitters that support mood and motivation. If you're not moving regularly, you're not giving your brain the stimulus it needs to stay flexible, focused, and sharp. And then there's the role of stress, specifically how we manage it. Stress isn't inherently bad. Acute stress can enhance alertness and memory, but chronic, unregulated stress increases levels of cortisol and inflammatory cytokines that erode brain tissue over time. They impair hippocampal function, which is critical for memory, and increase activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. But here's where habit comes into play. Practices like deliberate breathing, mindfulness, or even simply taking a cold shower can modulate the stress response. Slow, controlled inhales followed by extended exhales activate the parasympathetic nervous system, shifting the body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. These aren't just calming. They are biologically meaningful signals that recalibrate your nervous system. Social habits matter too. We are wired for connection. Oxytocin, a hormone and neuropeptide, is released during meaningful social interactions and physical touch. It reduces the threat response and enhances feelings of trust and safety. Isolation, on the other hand, increases cortisol and undermines the architecture of healthy brain function. Building habits around real social connection, meals with friends, shared laughter, eye contact, is essential for a thriving mind. Even the way we breathe is a habit that can shape the brain. Nasal breathing, particularly during sleep and exercise, is more than a preference. It affects oxygen uptake, nitric oxide levels, and even cranial development. Mouth breathing can be associated with disrupted sleep, reduced oxygenation, and increased anxiety. Cultivating a practice of conscious, nasal, dominant breathing helps regulate both mental and physical states. And let's not ignore the power of focus. The act of focusing on something, really locking in your attention, triggers the release of acetylcholine, a neuromodulator that sharpens neural circuits. But if your day is littered with distractions, if your attention is constantly fragmented, you're training your brain to be scattered. Neuroplasticity is direction, agnostic. It doesn't care if the input is good or bad. Whatever you repeat, your brain will wire for. That means every time you reach for your phone, every time you interrupt a train of thought to check a notification, you're reinforcing neural patterns of distraction. So here's the truth. Your brain becomes what you consistently do, and food, sleep, exercise, light, stress management, and focus. These are the non-negotiables. They're the scaffolding that either supports or suppresses your highest cognitive potential. If there's one thing I want to emphasize, it's that change doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. Start with the basics. Get sunlight in the morning. Go to bed at the same time every night. Eat whole foods rich in protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Move your body every day. Create space to breathe, reflect, and connect with others. And most importantly, pay attention to how these actions make you feel, not just immediately, but over days and weeks. Because what you'll find is that small, intentional choices build momentum. They create a feedback loop where better input leads to better output, which reinforces the value of staying the course. There are no hacks that can substitute for the fundamentals. Supplements can support, but they cannot override a poor diet or erratic sleep. Meditation apps can help, but they cannot erase chronic overstimulation from hours of social media. You cannot medicate your way out of lifestyle-driven dysfunction. But the good news is that you can earn your way to mental clarity and emotional resilience through action, through practice, through repetition. This isn't about being superhuman. It's about becoming human at a higher resolution. It's about reclaiming agency over the variables that shape your biology, one choice at a time. And when you do, You begin to access levels of focus, creativity, and calm that feel almost unnatural, not because they are, but because they've become so rare in the modern world. The mind is not separate from the body. What you eat, how you sleep, how you move, and what you repeat. These are the levers, and when you learn to pull them with purpose, the brain responds, it adapts. It strengthens, and it begins to work for you, not against you. This is a biological reality. It is not theoretical. It's not philosophical. It's science, and it's accessible to anyone willing to respect the system and engage with it. Not just for a week, not just during a New Year's resolution, but as a way of life. The work is not always easy, but the rewards, clarity of thought, emotional stability, drive, and purpose are profound. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're simply a reflection of your current inputs. Change those, and everything else begins to change too, because the mind you want is just on the other side of the habits you choose today. The way we interact with the modern environment has shifted dramatically compared to how our physiology has evolved to function. Our brains are adapted to conditions that demanded physical activity, predictable light exposure, whole foods, social interaction, and moments of both stress and recovery. Today, we live in an environment that often pushes us toward the opposite: sedentary routines, artificial light cycles, ultra-processed foods, fragmented attention, and chronic stress without relief. That mismatch is not just a lifestyle problem, it's a neurological one. It's a source of much of the anxiety, burnout, brain fog, and emotional volatility that people struggle with. When we talk about habits that shape the mind, we have to talk about repetition. The nervous system is designed to encode what is repeated. Neurons that fire together, wire together. This principle explains why the things you do daily, regardless of whether they feel significant, are the most powerful determinants of how your brain functions. If your habits involve waking up with your phone, skipping meals or fueling with sugar and caffeine, working under constant distraction, and ending the day with screen exposure until you fall asleep, your brain is adapting to that environment. It's learning to become reactive, unfocused, overstimulated, and underslept. This is not weakness, it's biology doing exactly what it's designed to do in response to the inputs it receives. Now consider what happens when you shift those inputs. You wake up and get outside into natural light, you hydrate, you eat a nutrient-dense meal within the first few hours of waking, maybe eggs, some greens, maybe healthy fats like avocado or olive oil. You create boundaries around your attention, work in focused blocks, take real breaks, put your phone in another room during deep work. You prioritize some form of movement each day, maybe a long walk, maybe a short strength session. You downshift your nervous system in the evening with a book, a stretch routine, a conversation with someone you trust. These actions might seem ordinary, but their compound effect on brain health and cognitive performance is extraordinary. We also need to understand the influence of micronutrients, vitamins and minerals that play foundational roles in brain chemistry. Magnesium, for example, is involved in over 300 biochemical reactions, including those related to nerve transmission and muscle relaxation. A deficiency in magnesium can contribute to anxiety, sleep issues, and muscle tension. B vitamins, particularly B6, B9 folate, and B12, are essential for the production of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. When these levels are low, the mind can become unstable, moods can swing, and energy levels can tank. Iron, zinc, and iodine also play critical roles in attention, memory, and emotional regulation. The absence of these minerals isn't just a physical issue, it creates cognitive friction that prevents the brain from functioning fluidly. Another habit that deeply affects the brain is how and when we eat. Beyond what you eat, the timing of your meals can influence your circadian rhythm and metabolic flexibility. When people eat irregularly or late into the night, the body's natural rhythm is disrupted. Metabolism slows in the evening and digestion becomes less efficient. This leads to disturbed sleep, lower quality rest, and groggy mornings. On the other hand, anchoring meals during the daylight hours, especially the first one within an hour or two of waking, helps the body know it's daytime. That synchronizes hormonal systems and sets the tone for better energy and focus throughout the day. Let's also talk about the role of hydration. Most people are walking around mildly dehydrated. Even a small drop in hydration, just 1 to 2%, can impair short-term memory, concentration, and mood. The brain is around 75% water. It needs that water not just for cooling or circulation, but for the electrochemical processes that underlie thought itself. A dehydrated brain is a sluggish brain. Regular hydration, ideally with electrolytes in balance, improves neuronal communication and supports the hormonal systems that govern stress and recovery. There's another layer to all of this, and it involves the concept of interoception, the brain's ability to sense the internal state of the body. Interoception is what allows you to recognize hunger, fullness, fatigue, stress, and calm. It's how the brain maintains homeostasis, but modern habits often disconnect us from this awareness. Fast eating, constant snacking, distraction during meals, and sedentary behaviors all dull our interoceptive sensitivity. When that happens, we stop recognizing when we're truly tired, or when we've eaten enough, or when we need movement. The result is a pattern of ignoring internal cues and relying instead on external stimulation, caffeine, sugar, entertainment, to feel okay. Rebuilding interoceptive awareness means slowing down, listening to the body, breathing deeply, and observing how habits actually feel in real time. It's important to acknowledge that behavior change, even with good information, is not easy. The brain favors the familiar, it resists change, and yet, once new patterns are established and repeated, they become easier to sustain. That's because the brain rewires itself through consistency. Synaptic pruning, where unused neural pathways are removed, makes way for more efficient circuits that support the behaviors you're reinforcing. That's how habits become identity. You are literally sculpting the structure and function of your brain every time you act on intention rather than impulse. Another powerful habit for shaping the brain is gratitude. And this isn't just a vague emotional state, it has a biological signature. Practicing gratitude increases activity in the prefrontal cortex and strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. This connection is essential for emotional regulation. Regular gratitude practices like writing down 3 things you're thankful for and improve sleep, reduce stress, and increase resilience. Why? Because they shift the brain's default mode away from scanning for threats and toward recognizing safety and opportunity. This isn't just psychological, it's neurochemical. It influences dopamine and serotonin systems in ways that support motivation and contentment. Let's not forget the impact of posture and physicality on mental state. The brain is in constant dialogue with the body. Slouching, shallow breathing, lack of movement. These send signals of fatigue and low energy to the brain. Conversely, standing tall, walking briskly, breathing deeply, these create upward signals of vitality and readiness. This is called embodied cognition. Your physical state affects your thoughts and emotions just as much as the reverse. That's why even simple movements like stretching, standing, or walking can shift your mood and clarity in a matter of minutes. There's a specific kind of habit that deserves its own mention, and that's the habit of stillness. In a world that's always rushing, constantly connected, and perpetually demanding attention, the ability to sit in silence has become rare, and yet incredibly valuable. Quieting the external world gives your nervous system space to down-regulate. More importantly, it allows your mind to enter the default mode network, which is responsible for introspection, creativity, and memory consolidation. This doesn't require hours of meditation. Just 5 to 10 minutes a day of deliberate stillness, eyes closed, no input, can recalibrate your mental state and make the rest of your day more focused and intentional. Decision fatigue is another critical piece. Each decision we make throughout the day requires cognitive energy. When your brain is constantly switching contexts, jumping from emails to texts to work to distractions, it depletes neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine. By the afternoon, you're running on fumes. That's why habits and routines are so effective. They remove the need for constant decision-making. You don't have to wonder what to eat, when to move, or how to manage your time if your day is structured around a consistent rhythm. That frees up cognitive bandwidth for the things that actually require thought, strategy, and creativity. And finally, let's talk about the importance of purpose. The brain is wired to seek meaning. When your habits are aligned with a sense of direction, when your actions feel connected to a larger goal or value, your brain releases neuromodulators like dopamine in a more sustainable and fulfilling way. Purpose isn't found, it's built, and it's built through consistency, through aligning your behavior with what matters to you most. Every action that supports that alignment strengthens the neural circuits of motivation and resilience. In the end, the brain does not operate in isolation. It is embedded in a body, and that body is embedded in a world. Food, light, movement, breath, focus, connection. These are not optional elements of mental health. They are the foundation. The modern world will not automatically lead you to optimal brain function. You have to be intentional. You have to be strategic. But once you begin to take control of the inputs, the brain responds. It adapts. It begins to work for you, not just because you want it to, but because biology, when supported correctly, has a powerful tendency to move toward balance, strength, and clarity. Your habits today are building the architecture of your brain tomorrow. That is the reality, that is the opportunity, and it's one that begins the moment you choose it. When we look even deeper into how food and habits sculpt the mind, we enter the territory of neuroplasticity. This is the brain's incredible ability to change in response to experience, behavior, and environment. What this means is that you are never stuck, biologically or mentally. No matter your age or background, your brain remains malleable. But the quality and direction of that change are directly influenced by what you expose it to daily. Food provides the raw material for change. Habits provide the repetition that wires it in. Both are essential. One of the most underappreciated aspects of mental performance is gut health. The gut-brain axis is not theoretical. It is a well-documented, bidirectional communication pathway that connects the emotional and cognitive centers of the brain with peripheral intestinal functions. The gut contains its own nervous system, often called the enteric nervous system, with over 500 million neurons, more than the spinal cord. It also produces about 95% of the body's serotonin, a neurotransmitter intimately tied to mood, motivation, and well-being. What you feed your gut bacteria has a direct impact on what kind of signals are sent to your brain. A diet rich in fiber, fermented foods, and prebiotic-rich plants supports a diverse and resilient microbiome. That diversity is crucial. It governs how well your gut digests nutrients, regulates inflammation, and communicates with the brain. When your diet is dominated by processed, low-fiber, high-sugar foods, the microbial diversity shrinks. Harmful bacteria thrive, and the integrity of the gut lining is compromised, leading to what's often called leaky gut. That condition allows inflammatory molecules to pass into the bloodstream and eventually cross the blood-brain barrier, disrupting neurotransmitter function and contributing to cognitive fog, fatigue, and even depressive symptoms. Moreover, the gut has a direct link to the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve that runs from the brainstem to the abdomen. Stimulating this nerve through diet, breath, and movement has been shown to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest, digestion, and recovery. Simply eating in a calm state, chewing thoroughly, and avoiding screen distractions during meals can significantly improve vagal tone and allow the digestive system to operate efficiently, supporting better mental clarity and emotional regulation. Sleep is another critical habit that dramatically affects brain health. While it may seem passive, sleep is one of the most active times for the brain. During deep sleep, cerebrospinal fluid washes through the brain, clearing out metabolic waste products like beta, amyloid, which are implicated in cognitive decline. REM sleep, which occurs later in the sleep cycle, is essential for emotional processing, memory consolidation, and creativity. Diet affects sleep quality. Caffeine and alcohol disrupt sleep architecture, and a high sugar or high fat meal late in the evening can lead to increased wakefulness and restlessness. Timing your last meal at least 2 to 3 hours before sleep allows the body to shift its resources away from digestion and toward repair. Additionally, nutrients like magnesium, L-theanine found in green tea, and tryptophan found in turkey, seeds, and oats support the natural production of melatonin and serotonin, aiding both the initiation and quality of sleep. Even your exposure to light during the day affects sleep. Morning light helps anchor your circadian rhythm, while avoiding bright artificial light, especially blue light, within 2 hours of bedtime supports melatonin in release. The cascade of sleep-related neurochemistry is intricate, but it can be supported with simple daily choices. In terms of movement, the effects on the brain are nothing short of profound. Regular aerobic exercise increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a protein that supports the growth and survival of neurons. Think of BDNF as a kind of fertilizer for the brain. It enhances learning, protects against age-related decline, and supports emotional stability. Strength training also plays a significant role, particularly in increasing testosterone and growth hormone, both of which support focus, motivation, and resilience. But even beyond formal workouts, simple movements like walking create rhythmic firing patterns in the brain that facilitate problem solving, creativity, and stress reduction. There's a reason some of the most productive thinkers in history were avid walkers. The bilateral stimulation of walking actually helps integrate the two hemispheres of the brain, leading to more coherent thought patterns and enhanced emotional processing. Walking in nature, specifically, has been shown to reduce activity in the default mode network associated with rumination and self-criticism. It's a simple habit with deep neurological rewards. Another often overlooked but vital practice is conscious breathing. Your breath is the only autonomic function you can control voluntarily, and through it, you gain access to the autonomic nervous system. Fast, shallow breaths activate the sympathetic nervous system, your stress response. Slow, deep nasal breathing activates the parasympathetic system, your relaxation response. Even just 5 minutes of deliberate breathwork per day, such as box breathing, alternate nostril breathing, or physiological sighs, can lower cortisol, regulate heart rate variability, and enhance your ability to stay calm under pressure. It's not just psychological comfort, it's nervous system recalibration. Your brain also craves novelty and learning. Introducing new skills, even small ones, like learning a few phrases in a new language, trying a musical instrument, or changing up your routine, keeps neural circuits flexible and engaged. Novel experiences trigger dopamine release, which is essential not just for pleasure, but for drive. But for this to work long-term, you need to create an environment that supports sustained focus. Constant dopamine spikes from social media, multitasking, or endless stimulation desensitize your reward pathways. Over time, your baseline motivation drops. But when you train your brain to earn dopamine through effortful engagement, by pushing through a challenge, staying consistent with learning, or achieving a long-term goal, you rebuild a system of motivation that is durable, rewarding, and neurologically sound. Social habits, too, are deeply intertwined with brain function. Humans are wired for connection. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, is released during positive interactions and strengthens neural circuits related to trust, empathy, and emotional regulation. Isolation, on the other hand, can impair these systems, leading to dysregulation, anxiety, and even chronic inflammation. Meaningful conversation, laughter, eye contact, physical touch, and shared experience are not just emotional luxuries, they are neurobiological necessities. Scheduling regular time with people who elevate your energy, share your values, or simply allow you to be fully seen is a brain health strategy, not just a social preference. Digital habits matter too. The average person checks their phone over 90 times a day. Each time you do, you interrupt your brain's natural attention span and trigger a dopamine hit that diminishes your ability to focus long-term. Multitasking, especially digital multitasking, fragments neural activity. Over time, it changes the prefrontal cortex's ability to sustain attention. Reclaiming focus involves setting boundaries, time blocks without devices, digital fasts, or even just turning off non-essential notifications. Focus is a trainable skill, and the more you practice single tasking, the more neurochemical resources are available for deep work, creativity, and insight. Fasting, when practiced strategically, can also support brain health. Intermittent fasting, or time-restricted eating, has been shown to enhance autophagy, the cellular cleanup process that removes damaged proteins and organelles. In the brain, this reduces oxidative stress and inflammation, both of which are associated with mental decline. Fasting also increases the production of ketones, an efficient energy source for neurons. Many people report enhanced mental clarity and sharper memory during fasted states, particularly when the fasting window aligns with the body's natural circadian rhythm. However, fasting isn't for everyone and must be approached with an understanding of your unique metabolic needs. One final but crucial point: self-talk, the inner dialogue you maintain throughout the day, has a biological impact. Negative self-talk increases stress hormone levels, weakens immune function, and reinforces neural patterns of fear, doubt, and shame. Positive or constructive self-talk, on the other hand, strengthens prefrontal cortex dominance, where logic, planning, and compassion reside, and quiets the amygdala, which is responsible for fear responses. Cultivating a habit of speaking to yourself with clarity, truth, and encouragement rewires the brain for resilience. The mind is not an abstract concept floating above the body. It is embedded in neurons, shaped by hormones, fueled by nutrients, governed by rhythms, and deeply impacted by the signals it receives. Every bite you eat, every step you take, every hour you sleep or stay awake, every breath you consciously slow, every distraction you ignore, every moment of stillness you protect, all of it writes code into your nervous system. That code becomes your perception, your mood, your focus, your memory, your identity. It's not just about doing the right thing once. It's about repeating it enough that your brain recognizes it as truth. And the beautiful thing about the human nervous system is that it wants to work for you. It's always looking for cues about what to prioritize. When you feed it with the right inputs, nutritionally, behaviorally, socially, emotionally, it begins to optimize. Not in a theoretical or motivational sense, but in the concrete structure of neurons, the velocity of synapses, the regulation of hormones. That optimization doesn't just feel better, it is better. It is scientifically measurable, neurologically supported, and completely within your power to influence. So, in conclusion, your mind is not separate from what you eat, how you sleep, how you move, or the habits you repeat each day. It is deeply intertwined with your biology, shaped and sculpted by your behaviors, your environment, and the rhythms you choose to follow. Every nutrient you consume, every breath you take, every decision to prioritize focus or connection or stillness, these are not just lifestyle choices. They are powerful biological instructions that determine how your brain functions, how your emotions stabilize, how your thoughts are processed, and how resilient you become in the face of challenge. The brain is plastic, the body is intelligent, and both are waiting for consistent signals to guide their evolution. You are not at the mercy of your mind, you are its architect. And by understanding how food and habits shape that architecture, you gain access to a life that is not only clearer, calmer, and more energized, but fundamentally aligned with the biology that supports your fullest potential.